Can you hear me now? Welcome, everyone. Welcome back. I'm gonna give a few minutes so people can join. Hello. How are you feeling today about the second day? See this? Excited. Good, good. That's good news. That's very, very good news. Hello, hello. Nice. I hope you had fun doing the part. I saw like already some projects on Slack. I was actually super happy to see it. And I like going through it and then discovering new things about the cities and then things to do and so on. So please keep sharing. On a scale from 0 to 5, where 5 you found it quite okay, you're confident and feeling good about HTML, and 0 you found it really challenging and hard. How did you feel about HTML? Like doing the first part, if you did or not, the optional one, which was to add the list, it doesn't matter, but give me numbers. You can put it on the chat. Where 0 you found it really, really hard, and 5 really confident. 5, 5, 3, 5, 4. Okay, good. Good. That's really good, really positive, really good numbers. Especially because without HTML, we cannot really build anything. So I'm actually glad. And I think it's, especially if you never had any contact with it, it's a good way to begin because you understand like how to give instructions to a computer, how like some of the things that we need to follow. For example, the syntax, what happens when you forget a brace or a bracket or those kind of things, they're super important when you start to code. And if you're feeling this positive, if you never code before and then you feel comfortable coding something, I'm actually very happy. Now, we're gonna make things look nicer, and then maybe you're gonna find it like even better. You're gonna feel even more excited. I had a hard time seeing on the YouTube screen, and my calendar did not put a yesterday. Oh, I'm sorry. Today I'm gonna share the link right after the session. I mean, I guess you're gonna receive an email with it as well, but I'm gonna share it on Slack right after the session. The link for the to watch. I'm starting today. Where can I watch the last class? Are you, well, probably you receive an email with the link. And if you are on Slack, on the Slack channel, which is this one here, the CodeUp community, there is, I posted here, there's this post with the link from yesterday's lecture. I can also see if I can, I don't know if it's gonna work, but we could try. I'm gonna share the link again, but it is yesterday's link. So I'm not sure if you're not on Slack, I'm not sure that this is gonna work. Give me a second. If you are not on Slack, Slack invitation. There you go. I see a hand raised. You can use the chat or the Q&A if you have any question, please. Let me change this. Now, let me go back to this. Okay, so here on the 3-day code challenge, either you receive the email with the same link. I share the link from the video on YouTube. Also, I can copy and share yesterday's lecture. It's also on the chat if you need. Okay, 5 minutes. Let's begin. For those who join after, like 2 things. If you didn't join yesterday, YouTube didn't have any links yesterday. No, on the YouTube it was live stream, so the links are not there. The main one that I shared is the one what you're gonna need is the one from CodePen, which is the platform that we're gonna use. And I can share again. This is the code that I share with my coded on Slack, and everything it's on Slack, like the recording and the code from yesterday. Basically, if you're joining today for the first time, be aware that we're gonna learn a new thing today. We're gonna talk about CSS, and you're gonna code this on top of what we did yesterday, but that's no problem, okay? Because you can still watch today's lecture, you can still understand how CSS work, and then you can watch it later. You won't have the code to code along with me, but I suggest you to stay because you can see the explanation, you can see what CSS is about, and then you combine and do the code all together. Now, for those who joined yesterday, I don't know how to share what I did. You can just copy this link, just like I did. You need to be logged in on CodePen and save your progress. And then you just copy this link and paste it on Slack here. Now, for those who were here yesterday and had a chance to code and had a chance to do the steps that we mentioned, if you're not here when I was asking for you to post it on the chat. How do you feel about HTML from 0 to 5? Where 0 is that you're still struggling, you really don't understand the syntax or the concepts, and 5, you find it quite okay if you're really comfortable with it. So for those who didn't answer, yeah, cool, nice. 3, 4, 4.5, 3.5, 3, 3, 3, 4. That's actually a really, really good average. I'm very happy to hear this. I can't hear it. Everyone else, can you hear me? Yes, okay, so Sana, maybe you need to connect. You need to connect with Zoom. You need to allow the mic, the sound. Join the sound, I think. And if it's not working, you can leave and try to join again. Well, I guess if she can't hear me, she wouldn't know this. Who was it? Sana. Okay, cool. I was actually talking to you and I was like, yeah, she can't hear, this person can't hear, so what am I doing? I'm sorry, but I'm glad you can hear me now. Anyway, so let's go to a quick review. I'm just gonna recap what this is for today. I'm gonna recap a tiny bit of what we did yesterday, and then today we're gonna talk about CSS. What is CSS? We're gonna see some examples. Today's lecture, it's very much hands-on. And then we're just going to discuss a bit about the code that we're going to create together. Okay, so let's just quickly review. I'm going to review what we did using yesterday's code. So yesterday, basically, we talked about HTML. We said that it's a language of marks, not a programming language. And to create HTML, we're going to need to use some tags. The platform that we are writing the code, it's CodePen, and this is the part where we can create our HTML and write our HTML code. Now, in HTML, every single time that we want to create something, HTML, it's the standard language to create web pages. There is no page that you can open that it's not built with HTML. So whenever we want to create any element or any content that you see, because every content that you see on a page, it's HTML. So if you want to create a heading, an image, or a paragraph, we're going to use some tags. This is how we write HTML code. Code, it's nothing more than just give the computer some instructions, following the rules and the syntax, so the computer can compile for us. Now, in HTML, we're going to use those tags. Those tags, they are always written in the angle brackets. Most of the time, they're going to have an opening tag and a closing tag. So like this, the A, for example, or the nav, we have the opening tag and the closing tag, which is just the angle bracket, the / and the name of the tag. Here we have some of the tag names for those who missed. Some of the, we cannot choose, we need to use the tag names that exist. And in between the opening and the closing tag, we're going to place some content. So in this case here, the nav, it's a container. So everything that it's in between the opening and the closing tag is this container's content. And all of this together, it's an element. Now, the other thing that we can add, it's called attributes. So we can add class, we can add ID. For example, some tags, they have specific attributes. For example, the A tag, which is the tag for creating links in HTML. Whenever we use this tag, we need to use the attribute href. And then the syntax for writing attributes, it's always the same. We always write the attributes on the opening tag of the element. So inside of the angle brackets of the opening tag, we just need to give some space. So it's not together with the name. We need to have some space so the computer can understand that the tag it's A and the attribute it's href. And then it's the name of the attribute that we also cannot choose. We need to use the names of the attributes that exist. Equal sign. And then on the other side of the equality, in between quotes, the value that we want to pass. And then the value that we're going to pass, we decide. We're going to create. So here in the link tag, we always need to pass the href, which means where should the computer take, like where HTML should take the user when he clicks this link. So this is the href. So we need this to create the link. Or the image, that it's a special tag that doesn't have any content, so we don't have a closing tag. It's auto close. So it's just like one pair of angle brackets, IMG, and then the / at the end. And then every single time that we want to create an image with HTML, we need to use the src, which is the source of the image. So src =, quotes, and in between quotes, we're going to pass the URL of our image, the image that we want to render. And then apart from those, we also have the ID and the class that we're going to use it a lot today. So it's the same thing, the name of the attribute, =, quotes, and then the values. Excuse me, give me a second. Sorry, is the cat that you haven't seen yesterday? Yes. He is like that. He absolutely hates closed doors. And then the other door was closed. And was like, okay, open this. Who's closing the doors on my house? Question, does an attribute command ever get added to the closing tag? No, never, ever. And there's no scenario where you add the attribute on the closing tag. You're either going to add on the single tag, which is the case of the IMG, or in the opening tag, always in the opening tag. It's never on the closing one. Okay, so those were the things that we talked about. We talked about the containers. We create a few sections here. We added some links. We used 2 containers. We used the nav and the div. We used some header like the H1. We learned how to add an image, created paragraphs, and so on. This is what we did yesterday, okay? So moving forward, let's talk about CSS. CSS, it stands for Cascading Style Sheet, and a style sheet is just a file or a form that we use to define the overall look of a markup language file. So the HTML, it's a markup language file. The CSS, it's a sheet that is gonna style that HTML file, basically. And so the HTML, it's responsible for all the content that we see on the page. And then CSS, it's a language that will describe the visual appearance of the HTML elements. Let me share some links with you. This, it's one of my favorites, copy link. Let me paste this here. And I'm going to share this with you. Remember that I said that W3 School, it's a really, really good resource font. I'm going to use it again today. So yesterday, I shared something on the HTML with you. Today, this is CSS, the CSS tab. So a lot of cool things here. Now, this is the introduction about CSS. Like you can see, CSS, it's the language we use to style a web page. Now, pay attention to one thing. Here, we have the same HTML. Welcome to my homepage. Use the menu to select. Pay attention to the content that you see, okay? So we have the welcome to my homepage heading, and then some like a smaller heading. Use the menu. We have something written like sidebar, Lorem Ipsum, blah, blah, blah. We have same page, different styles. We have some buttons or links that we can click, like 1, 2, 3, 4, no style sheet. Here we have the same thing, same page, different styles, some text, and then the 1, 2, 3, 4, and then no styles, blah, 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 no style sheet. So this is the content, and this has been styled with CSS. This is the style sheet 1. If we use the same HTML, exactly the same, but some different CSS, it looks like a complete different page. But if you pay attention to the content, it's the same. Welcome to my homepage. Use the menu to select different style sheets. Same page, different styles, text, 1, 2, 3, 4, no styles, text, no style sheet, sidebar, that it's not even on the side anymore. It's at the bottom. And then we have all the buttons, the links that we could click here. So the content is the same, but we've changed the colors, the size, the placement, all of this. And this is just CSS. CSS, it's a very, very powerful tool, and you can manipulate your page in so many ways with it. We can also check the 3. So again, completely different style, the placement, the size of the letters, the colors, obviously. You can even look, this one has the sidebar on the same level as the style sheets links that we can click to change it here. We can fake this dark mode, we can create this as like a dark mode. And all this just with a different CSS style sheet. And this is how it looks like with no CSS at all. It's like 90s web page vibes. I don't know if all of you are gonna get the reference, but for those who get, you will know what I mean. So you can see the content is this. So the content is here, welcome to my page, the list, and all of this. But then we can style in any way that we want. So this one, it's really nice. I'm gonna share the other copy link. What is this? This is a cheat sheet. So here, so here you have some cheat sheet here. This is a nice page, actually. Let me see if they have. Well, there you go. You have some HTML and CSS. I prefer W3, to be honest, but this one is nice as well. And this, save this one. I'm not gonna talk about this one just yet, but I'm gonna go back to what is a CSS selector. So I'm gonna share this link. You can save it, but I'm not gonna talk about it just yet because I'm gonna explain it first, what it's a CSS selector. Now, how does the CSS code look like? Because remember that I said yesterday, each programming language or markup language or style language, it doesn't matter. You have a specific way to write it, and you need to follow the syntax rules of this language. And yesterday, I kind of showed you one very quick example of how it looks like. This is the syntax. You have the selector, which is which element, it's basically which element from the HTML document you want to select. And then we're gonna open the curly braces, always. And then in between the curly braces, we're gonna pass all the properties that we want to change for that element and the values that we want to give to those properties. And the way to write this, it's also what we call pairs of keys and values. So kind of similar to an attribute on HTML, but it's slightly different. We're gonna always write on the left side the property, so font size or color, for example. And then we're gonna use the column, and then we're gonna pass the values after the column. So in this case, 26 pixels or blue, and then we finish with the semicolon, okay? This is very important. The colon and the semicolon are very, very important. Please don't forget it, because the colon here, it's basically we say to the computer, okay, the name of the property, it's over. This is the property that I want, colon, and it understands that this is the name of the property. This is the value that I want this property to take. And then the semicolon states that you are done with this with this instruction. You have no other instruction about the font size. End of statement. You do this with the semicolon. So everything that you're going to start after this, it's a new statement. So new property, new values. So in this case, it would mean we select this element here, this paragraph, and we are saying that from now on, the font size of this paragraph will be 26 pixels, and the color, and when we say color in CSS means the text color, it's going to be blue. And yes, it's English sensitive. We cannot write color with the U. Oh, I think I have CSS in my code from yesterday. It's okay if you have CSS from yesterday. If you already know something, I actually added one piece of CSS. If you already have it, it's fine. Now, we need to understand a bit better how can we select the HTML elements. English spelling as well as American. Yeah, no, it doesn't. The selectors are used to target HTML elements that we want to style. So if I want to say, for example, I want the background of this div to be blue, or if I want the color of this paragraph to, the font of this paragraph to be 30 pixels, I don't know. We need to specifically say, remember that I also said that computers do not assume anything, so we need to be very specific. I cannot say this one, get me this paragraph here. There's no way, I need to be very specific. So we're gonna use the selectors for this. We're gonna talk about the 3 most common selectors, and those are the HTML element, so it's basically the name of the tag. H1, div, img, you know, it's the name of the tag. The same name that we have on the angle brackets, we can use it as a selector. And then curly braces. Now, it can be handy. Oh, don't do this to me. Get out. Wait. Look, this is not nice. Quit. Sorry about this. The downside of this option is that sometimes if I select the HTML element, the tag, every single element with that tag will take in the same values, the same style that I want to apply. And sometimes I want to be more specific. Maybe I don't want that every paragraph on my page to be blue, but I want the paragraph in that specific section to be blue. So it can be handy if you want to apply those values to all of those elements, but keep this in mind when using this type of selector, okay? Now, if you want to be more specific, we can use the class, and to be honest, is the most used option. We're gonna use classes a lot. And whenever we create an attribute, like a class, and we want to select the element based on this, for example, yesterday, I showed you that we can create, I don't know if you remember, but we had like a paragraph with a class equals quotes fruits. And we had actually 2 paragraphs with this class. Because the class, you can give the same value to multiple elements. And then whenever you want to target an element on CSS based on the class in HTML, we're gonna need to use a dot. This is in CSS. We're gonna use dot and then the name of the class, fruits. If it's a class in HTML, in CSS, we're gonna use a dot. And then the name of the class that we gave. And then curly braces, and in between the curly braces, same thing for all of them. And finally, we have the ID. If we have an ID on HTML, on CSS, we're gonna use a hash. And this is precisely the example that I gave yesterday. I think we have it here. I have the about me ID. So the ID in HTML, it's about -me. So in CSS, I do the hash, the same name that I have it here, and then the curly braces. Those are the 3 most used selectors, okay? We're gonna start with those 3. There are more ways you can cascade things, but this is not for today. We can do everything we want with those. Now, this is basically how it looks like. if in the HTML, I have a paragraph with the class fruits, so class equal quotes fruits, on my CSS, I want to target this specific paragraph. I'm going to say, hey, CSS, please find the element with the class fruit. Well, this is actually an instructor that we are sending to HTML. And then apply to this element the color red. So dot fruits is the selector. I open the curly braces and then I do the color, colon, red, semicolon. And this is my final result because the color changed the text color of the element. So this is the combination of both things with the final result. Does that make sense so far? Cool. Sweet. So, okay, here's another example. We can target like the container like I did in my example from yesterday. I was passing the value to the container. Why do you need to write class fruits to write I love fruit? I love fruit is just the content of the paragraph. No, so if you create a paragraph, this is not what it's being. This is not what is being printed to the screen. This is what it's being printed to the screen. In this paragraph, the content is I love fruit. So this is what we're going to see on the screen. Everything that happens inside of the tags, the final user, we don't see, but it's needed for the computer to interpret. And the class fruit, it's to target this element because the default color and placement of the paragraph is just being black. But imagine that I want this paragraph to be red. I will do this on CSS, but to do this in CSS, I need to be able to say, find this specific paragraph and set the color to be red. And then to find the specific paragraph on my code, I'm going to do this based on the class, on the attribute class. So I give it a class. So in my CSS file, which is a different file, I can select and then change the color red. And then this is the final result that I'm going to see it on my screen. I hope that answers your question. Now, this is imagine that we have this example here. The same example from yesterday, we have a container with the class shopping basket. We had two paragraphs with the class fruits, the apple and the orange. And we had one paragraph with the ID favorite. And imagine that we applied this CSS. For the element with the class fruits, we're just saying, hey, CSS, please find the element with the class fruits and apply the font size of this element to be 26 pixels and the color to be red. So font size, colon, 26 pixels, semicolon, color, colon, red, semicolon. And also find the element with the ID favorite, because it's an ID, so we're going to use the hash, and change the background color of this element to yellow and the color of this element to blue. So this is the final result. The two elements, can an element have both class and ID? Yes. The only thing that it's not allowed is two elements with the same ID. The final result that we get is that the elements with the class fruits, both the apple and the orange, will take the font size of 26 pixels and the color red. And we can do this in a single statement, and both of them will be modified because they have the same class. I don't need to write one piece of code for the first paragraph and the same piece of code for the second. I can just give them the same class, and that's it. If I want them to behave the same, I can use the same class. The favorite, it's having this different behavior. I'm painting the background color of this paragraph of yellow, and then the color blue. And just this specific paragraph, it's being affected because I am selecting the element with the ID favorite. And this is the only element with the ID favorite that we have. We can also target the container. if we want to do the same action for all of the elements, which is precisely what I'm going to take a look at the questions in a second, which is precisely what I did here. I selected the entire container and I passed the property to text align, and I passed the value of center. So in one command, like in one instruction, I centralized the image, the H1, the H2, and the paragraph. Because I wanted that all the elements in my container to behave the same. Okay, let's see. What if I wanted orange and apple to have different color? You would need a class for each one of them. And then give the commands separately. Does it have to be on separate lines? You mean like this, the font size in one line and the color in another line? No, like I said, the computer, if you use the semicolon, the computer will understand that every information that you are passing about font size is done. So if you want to start writing color right after the semicolon, the computer will understand. But also, like I said yesterday, we don't write code only for computers. We write code for computers to interpret, but for humans to read. And to increase human readability, it's a lot easier and better if we have each one of the properties in one line. I try to centralize the text like you did, but it doesn't work for me. I don't know why. If you want, you can share your code, but make sure that you have the same, you don't have spaces like in the ID, you are targeting the entire container. You don't have any spaces or special characters. And in the CSS, I'm using an ID, so I need the hash about me, and the property is text align. Make sure it's not there's no typo. Colon, center, semicolon. Why we don't give the third one also a class like class favorite instead of ID? Does it make a difference? In that case, it was just to show different attributes, but imagine that you want to make sure that the favorite is always going to have a specific behavior. The favorite is for when you want to make sure that no other element can have that specific value. So you want to protect. And this is a really good case of why do we use IDs, for example, which is when we want to set a link to direct this ID. I don't want that any other element maybe have the same reference. Otherwise, it could navigate my user to a different place. So in this case, the ID makes a lot of sense. I agree that in this case here, it doesn't seem much because we're just painting, but imagine that you want to make sure that this speech will always be the only one that it's favorite. That's why we have an ID. It would work if you had a class as well, favorite. It would work just the same. The only thing that you would need to change is the selector, because if it's a class, it needs to be a dot instead of a hash. Is CSS also responsible for a space between elements? Yes. Everything that it's related to placement, it's CSS. I mean, there are certain things that you can do. You can create, for example, a break line. You can create, for example, some elements will take the entire space. For example, a paragraph takes in the entire line, whereas a span, it's like an inline code. So there are certain things that you can do with HTML, but everything, because you're not going to really write the HTML without CSS, we usually handle all the spacing and positioning with CSS. When I centralized the text, I left the numbers from my ordered list on the left side, but the text was central. Okay, this is that's tricky but this is what it will happen. This is the default behavior. What you would need to do is to remove the default dots from the list and style it differently. But this is the default behavior. Whenever you centralize in an ordered list, the bullet points stay on the left and the text centralized. It's horrible, I know, but this is the default styling of a list in HTML. So what we do usually it's to remove the default style from HTML and style it in a better way with just CSS. I can't seem to get it work with my P class element, but I can with the div ones. It is still a hash at the front of the P class. I'm not sure I get the question, but if you have a class, it should be a dot and not a hash. If you are selecting something based on the class, it should be this and the class name. You know, class dash name, if it's a class. How would I go about importing a font that isn't built in? You can use, for example, Google Fonts, and then they're going to give you a specific HTML tag to add to your HTML document. This won't be possible in CodePen, but it's just like you import this style, this font into your project, and then you are able to use it. But this is not possible in the platform that we use because CodePen, it's handling a lot of things. We don't have access. This is one of the things that we discussed yesterday. If I open any page and if I inspect, the default HTML document is this one here. I have a head and a body. We don't have access to this because CodePen is handling everything. So we don't need to install or run anything. So you can't do this with CodePen. If it's a paragraph, you use P, right? Yes, right. So if I don't write the element, wait, I think I missed one. Okay, so if I don't write the element, it doesn't work right in what I want, only in CSS, they work together. It needs to exist in HTML. Yes, the only single purpose of the CSS is to style the HTML. With no, like if there's no HTML, the CSS is not styling anything. If the element does not exist, I could say test and say background color yellow. Nothing's going to change because this element does not exist. But the moment I give it a class, imagine that I do this. I give this class test to an element, it will add the CSS to it because now the element exists. I know, horrible. I'm going to remove this. What is the best platform to code on? It depends. For this workshop purposes, I think CodePen is perfect because we don't need to install anything. There's no prior like downloads required. You can access from any computer. You can also use Code Sandbox that it's not required to use anything. Code Sandbox, really, really, really amazing platform. And the designs, it's just like the code editor that it's called Visual Studio Code. You can use it as well. They prepare some templates for you if you want to use it. Now, if you want to code on your own computer, then it's not a platform. You need the code editor and you need to have it how to run this code. And then for this, I use Visual Studio Code. This is my code editor of my preference. This is the one that I use. Okay. I think I answered all the questions. Okay. Well, anyway, let's actually code. This is what I wanted to show you about on the slides. Like I said, today it's very hands-on. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove this. Is look like it's hurting my eyes. So let me get rid of this. Okay. Cool. Let's talk about what we want to do today. I want to do a couple of things, okay? Let me think. If I do something wrong, like confusing the dot with the hash, and I don't get a result expected, is there a command that will show me where the error is? For this case, no. There are many things that show you, like the error, it's in line, whatever. But in this case, for example, if you are missing, if you mistake the dot with the hash, maybe there is an extension that you can download to the code editor that is going to highlight for you. But this is not an error in theory. There's nothing wrong. You're just targeting an element that doesn't exist. So no. I'm pretty sure I don't have any. I don't use any. But for example, in VS Code, if you use, let me show you quickly. if you use Visual Studio Code, this is where I write my code, for example. You can come here to the extensions and then maybe find something that would highlight this for you. I don't know, okay? This is, I'm not really sure, but this could be the case. Cool, let's move on. I want to do just a couple of things. Really, I don't want to change many things from it. Maybe I want to change this image a tiny bit and just make it like nicer, because I think it's first, yesterday someone asked me if he could make the image smaller, and yes, we can. I'm going to show you two things. I could just access the IMG like this, because this is the only image that I have right now. So I could access the image on CSS, and you can see it here that it's the IMG, and I could set the width, and this is my non-English native speaker personal nightmare, because I always swap the T and the H, and as I don't have anything that highlight this, it just don't work. And it just doesn't work, and then that's it. 15. So I always need to check and think if this is the right way to spell it. And I want this to take 15% of this actual size. You can select, maybe you can say 25. It's entirely up to you. But this is one way to make your image smaller. This was a question from someone yesterday. What about when you have more than one image? Then give it a class to it and select with the class. We're going to do this in a second, so you can see that we can select different elements based on the class. Or I could also say there's a really, really cool way of doing things, that I can nest things. You see, this image, it's inside of the About Me container. And to select the About Me container, I need to use the hash About Me. I could also say that I want the image, but only the image that is About Me. It's inside of the About Me container. So this is a nested way to select elements. This is quite cool, because in this way I can use the IMG, but if I, for example, create a different image, let me show you this real quick. I'm going to make it smaller so you can compare. But if I have an image that it's outside of my container, the About Me, it wouldn't be affected by this property here. It wouldn't be affected. This property is not going to be changed because it's not inside of the About Me container. So you can also use this or use the class, like I said. Now, the other thing that I want to do, I just want to make this, the About Me, it's not going to be the main section of my page. I want to talk more about my city, and I want to make the Welcome to Belo Horizonte the main one. So I'm just going to want to give it this. I just want to make it like a round image. So to create this round image, and this, it's only because I have a square image, okay? If I set the border dash radius, those properties from CSS, you need to use the properties that exist. Some of them, after using for too long, you're going to remember by heart. Some of them, it doesn't matter how long you use. Sometimes you're going to have a typo, but it needs to be written correctly, and it needs to be a property that exists, okay? I don't expect that you to remember. I don't know them all by heart. You can just Google, say how to make an image round on CSS. You can do this, and then you're going to see a list of properties and the values that you need to apply. But in this case, because I have a square image, if I set the border radius to be 50%, semicolon, I'm going to have the perfect circle. If your image, it's not rounded, it's going to be like an ellipse. It's fine, okay? This is in my case because I have the squared one. If you want to have a square one like mine, you can use this, or you can set the width and the height to be the same. You can hard code the values, for example, saying that you want the width to be 150, like 200 pixels, and the height to be 200 pixels as well. For example, height. No, this is wrong, no? No, this is right. If you say 200 pixels, and here 200 pixels, no, this is not good. You're also gonna have it, yes, it's wrong. I always swap the, no, this is height. Yes, thanks. You see, that's what I'm saying. Is it changing before I finish the text with semicolon? How does the border radius make it circular? It's just applying border to all the four sides of 50%. If you decrease this, if I just said, for example, 10, it's just gonna make it a round shape. I'm taking 50, so it's gonna give me the perfect circle because it's a square image. And I don't want this big, so I'm just gonna go back to, I want the small one, so 15%, maybe 20%, it's enough. Is it changing before I finish the text with semicolon? So what is the use of semicolon? Okay, so CodePen, it's, okay, the thing is, this last one, it's not gonna crash. If the last one, it's without it. But if I remove from the first one, it's got the next one, it's not gonna work. Okay, so the last one, if you miss the semicolon, it's not gonna completely crash your code, but it's not ideal because the moment that you add something else, it's gonna stop working. So always add the semicolon. Can we use pixels also for border radius? Let's try. 15 pixels. Yes, you can. How would you use an image from your computer? Would you have to host it somewhere first? Yes. I mean, you have to have it on your computer. This is what I said yesterday. The syntax, it's always the same. You will have the image and then the SRC, and then inside of the quotes, you have the path from the HTML file until your image. And for example, in my case, for example, if I was writing the code here, these are all the files that I have. It would need to live in here. So it's better if it lives on the folder that you are, on the project that you are working, or you can even pass the path until where the documents image folder from your computer. You can do this. In CodePen, the free version, it's not allowed. So in the paid version, I know you can drag and drop and add the image to your project, and then you pass the path until the image, and then it will work. But in here, no. Do you usually put your CSS selectors in a particular order or on your style sheet? That's a good question. Not really, but I like to add a comment so I know what is going on here. So I can add a comment, for example, especially for when I'm going to share the code with you, about me. So I at least know. So CSS, it's not really top to bottom, so it doesn't really matter. And this commented out, you can see that this line of code is grayed out. So this is basically a comment that I'm using for human readability and organization, but the computer is ignoring it. Okay, this is enough from the about me. I'm not going to do anything else in this section. So I'm going to work with this welcome to Belo Horizonte section here. And this is my main section. And I would like to make it like a intro section and like add a nice background image and do some cool stuff with it. So this is actually what I'm going to be working on. The first thing that I want to do is to first select this container. This one, this is, wait. Let me give some space so I can see. I prefer this. I'm going to give it a class to the container because I want to manipulate the entire container. So I'm going to give it a class, and this is going to be my intro section. First thing, how can you add padding in CSS? The name of the property, it's padding. So you select the element and you set the padding. We're gonna add it later. Let me add. So basically, my idea is to have a nice background image, make this section a lot like bigger so we can see it better, and like take a higher portion of the screen. And I'm gonna add an comment here so we know. And here in my div, I have a class called intro, and I want to select this container, this container here, the entire container. Unsure when to use hash and when to use the dot. The hash, it's for when you are targeting an element based on the ID. The dot is for when you're targeting an element based on the class. In my case, I want to select this container that has a class called intro. So I'm going to do dot intro. That's it. If it's a class, it's a dot. And intro is the name of the class that I gave. So that's it. And then I'm going to open my curly braces. Now, the very first thing that I want to do, I want this section, the entire section, to have to be higher, like to occupy a higher portion of my screen. So I'm going to change the high. This, I'm going to, assistant number 1 is here. Okay. I want to set my height to be, for example, 800 pixels. And this will make all of my section 800 pixels higher. And it will push everything that it's after. It will push everything below, you know, because this now takes 800 pixels of my screen. That's it. That's my first step. Now, the second thing, maybe I'm going to change this to be, I think this section is going to be nicer if we do it like this. Yeah. This is way too big. I'm going to make it 15. Yeah, this is nicer. Okay, the second thing that I want to do is I want to add a background image to this section, to this intro section. So yesterday, I taught you how to add an image with HTML, but when it's about background image, we can do this with CSS. And there is one property on CSS that it's called background-image that we can use. And you say, hey, please add a background image to this container. Are you going to do this for me, Anouk? Or are you going to be the background image of the container? Now, it's the same thing. Remember that on HTML, when we wanted to add a background image, and I'm being pushed to the side of the table, I have to follow the will and the wishes of the cat. Whenever I want to add an image on HTML, I need to specifically say, okay, here is the path. And then I need to write in the src the URL for it. In CSS, I still need to do the same. It's like where the image that you want to add to the background of the element with the class intro is coming from. So the syntax is slightly different. We just write URL, and then we open parentheses. And then inside of this parenthesis, without quotes or without anything, we're going to paste our URL. And yes, you can pass, if it's a project where you are allowed to add your own images, you could just pass the path from the file until your image in your computer, but it's not the case here. We're going to work with just with URL. Remember that if you are using URLs, Unsplash, this is a nice page that you can use for free images with high quality if you want. Can a CSS property override an attribute in HTML? For example, in HTML, an image has a size cap of 200 pixels in height and width. However, in CSS, the property for the image says height and width should be 400 pixels. Yes, it can. You mean when, okay. This is the default. You're asking when the default size, like I add the image and then the default size of the image is 200 pixels. You can override this with HTML. Now, if your question is about the inline style, if you already use CSS and you're asking me about the inline styles, the answer is going to be different. Let me know if it's the second case, or if it's just like you selected the image from somewhere on the internet, it was 200, you set to 400 on the CSS, it's going to be 400. Now, remember that whenever you want to copy the image that you want, you need to right-click and copy the image address. It's not copy image. It needs to be the image address. If you are in doubt, you can copy the image address, and then you open the next page. It should open just the image and not a web page, just the image. This is the address where the image lives on the internet. Okay, so I have a wallpaper of my city here. So I'm just going to copy this. And the moment I paste the URL here, that's it. I have the image being added to the background because you can see that the text, it's over my image. So this is how easy it is. It's like CSS, please add an image to the background of the element with the class intro. This is the address. Boom, that's it. Mine comes with multiple versions of the photo next to each other. Okay, give me a second. My image has been repeated. Okay, give me a second. Same question. We're gonna get there. If you have something like this, if you have many images repeated, it's because it's repeating the image is too small, and it's repeating the image over and over, so it fits to the container. So then you can add a property called background-repeat, and you can set to no repeat. It's still gonna give you some problems. I'm gonna get that. But before, I need to fix my own problem, which is my image is gone. Can someone tell me why? And you can check this the hints. Semicolon, exactly. I don't have a semicolon here. So basically, what CSS it's understanding, you are very, very fast. Well done with the debugging. What CSS it's understanding here is that this statement here still belongs to the background image. Now, can you see that every code editor and even in CodePen, we have this. The colors of your code will give you some hints. For example, in CSS here, the tags are this specific color. Whatever I have in white, it's the text content of the HTML elements. Now in CSS, I have the yellow, it's the selector. And then the properties, they are always this purplish, whatever color. And then the values are kind of either this orange brick or then some yellow, but in the values. And when I wrote this background repeat here, I can see that two things. First, it's not being painted in purple, which means that it's not being read, it's not being, CSS is not reading this as a property. And the second, it's giving me some indentation, which is basically this statement still belongs to the previous one. So it's the same thing as doing this. And this is not something that exists on the background image. So if I add the semicolon will say, this is the end of the background image statement. I add the semicolon, everything goes back, the color is back here, and my image is back. Now, the no repeat should stop your image from repeating over and over and over. But if it's now too small, or in my case, my image might be a bit too big for my container, you can also set a property that is called background size, and then you set to cover the container. And now it's just going to fit to the container like this. I don't have the choice to copy the image URL. I just have copy. Maybe it's not available. I don't know. Maybe it's the image that you are searching. Try to get from the Unsplash, which is with this one here. And then you can copy the image address, because I know that in Unsplash, they have like good quality and they are all open and free to be used. Okay, so this is cool. This is nice. The other thing that I would, few things that I want to do. So many things that I want to fix here. I want to Unsplash is the page here. It's just a page. Yes, I'm saying Unsplash. Unsplash is just a page with free images that you can use. Okay, moving on. I want to fix a couple of things here, like this margin. And I want to add a few other things. The first thing that I'm going to do actually is to, so I'm going to add it later. I'm going to remove this margin here. I really don't like it. It's annoying. And this is actually a default property on every HTML content. How do you reduce the opacity of the background image? Reduce opacity of background image on CSS. You can use the opacity property. Usually I don't use, but you can just set opacity to, opacity goes from 0 to 1, where 0 it's completely, the opacity is complete, and 1 it's completely solid. So you could use this, opacity 0.5. And this is how I remember the properties that I don't use often. I just Google them, what I want to do, and then I get the answer. And then you can see it here. There you go, it's the same thing. My image didn't fit the container, it's still small. If it's too small, even after the background size set to cover, maybe the image is really too small for the container. If you change the view like this, it might be this. It might be nicer for you to see, or you can just find a bigger image as well. If you want to use mine for now, just so you can move on, and then after this you find a better one. I'm gonna share this. How can I add a space between the cover image and my circle image? I'm gonna do this in a bit, because this also bothers me. This one here, it hurts my eyes. There's also a process that while you make your web page looks nice, at some point it seems that things are going wrong, but trust the process. And then we're gonna fix one thing at a time. The first thing, I'm gonna remove this extra margin here. And this is, like I said, HTML doesn't have much style, but does have some things. For example, the links that you can click, it's kind of blue, and then when you click, it's purple, this default margin, and so on. This margin is by default, because before, without the CSS, the text would start very close to the left and to the top, so that every HTML file has some default style added. And one of those is this. I'm going to add this at the very top. You don't need to do this in the first line of your CSS, but I'm just going to do, because it's very common to look at the CSS style sheet and see this at the very top. Okay, this selector. This selector means select everything on my document. And obviously, you don't want to apply many things here, because you don't want this to be added everywhere. And it's very dangerous to do this. I mean, in the sense that it can manipulate your elements in a way that you don't want. What I'm going to set, though, this is the margin, and I'm going to set to 0. I'm going to set the margin of the document to be 0. And now all that extra margin is gone. Now I can choose the spacing for each one of the sections. For example, this intro section, I don't want the left space. But for the navigation bar, we're going to get that, I do want. Or for this one here, I also want, because it's centralized, but it's going all the way, you know? So we're going to fix this as well. Maybe we can even fix this here now in the About Me section. We can set some margin at the top. In CSS, we have margin and we have padding when we talk about spacing. The margin is the outer space of an element, and the padding is the inner space of that element. I will show you an example of a padding in a second. Both of them, you can choose if you want to add to the top, to the bottom, to the right, or to the left. If you don't specify, if you just say margin, you are considering all the 4 sides. If you specify one of them, it's going to be applied to that specific one. So we could say, for example, add, I don't know, 30 pixels here, and it will give you some space. That's too small, 70. 150. Better. And this is good. And I could also set a margin on both sides. This is going to be margin. Why? I'm gonna cheat. Margin CSS. Here we go. You have top, right, bottom, and left. And where is it? No, it's a different syntax. Never mind. I'm just gonna set. There's a nicer way, actually. If I go to margin CSS, this is the MDN web document. This is documentation from CSS. Some things I don't remember by heart, really. And there's one specific way. If you don't want to specify the margin from the right and the top and the bottom and so on and so forth, there is another option here that you can see. If you just say margin, will apply to all the 4 sides. If you just say margin and you pass 2 values, the first one will be applied to the top and the bottom, and the second one will be applied to the left and the right. Okay, I could use this actually, because I can leave some margin at the bottom as well. It will give me no harm. So I could just say margin instead of top. I could say 150 and 200 pixels. There you go. So it's 150 for a top, and maybe this might be too much. No. Yeah. So it's 100 for top and bottom and 200 for the sides. So it's 200 here, 200 here, 100 here, and 100 here. So this also fixed the issue between the cover image and the circle image. We already fixed the issue about the margin. I'm getting happier now. Okay, I can move on. There's still a few things that I want to do, but I want to handle this text here that I'm not happy about it. So, and I just realized that we've been talking too much. So let me move with this because I still want to add some CSS to the navigation bar. So instead of adding, I want to manage this text here, and I cannot target the intro class. I want to target just the H1. And maybe I want to add an H2 here as well. H2. Welcome to Belo Horizonte. This is the best pão de queijo. There might be some controversies, okay? Because it's the state, but I'm gonna set it this for now. It's okay. Imagine that I have those two, and I don't really like the look of this, but I'm gonna leave for now. I want to manipulate those two things. I want to centralize them. I want to make it bigger. I want to put like a black target like on the back as well, so we can manipulate. So instead of targeting the H1 and the H2, I'm just going to create yet another div, and I'm going to put those two inside of the same container. So this. So I can target the entire container with the H1 and the H2 together. I don't need to do this individually. And I'm going to give it a class. This is the title of my intro. So I'm going to call it intro title. Okay, something like this. And again, this is a class. So in my CSS, this is going to be a dot. So intro title, curly braces, and then I'm going to start passing the properties that I want. The first one we already used is the text align, and I'm going to set it to center, semicolon. First thing, this will align horizontally. I also want to change the color of the text to white. And I want to create like a background color to be black, like something background color. But I have a problem. I don't want a solid background. If I do this, it would be a solid black background and 90s website vibes all over again. This is not what I want. Now, when we talk about colors in CSS, if you go here to colors, you can see that you have a couple of ways of handling colors. You can use the color names. You have about 140 standard color names. So if you type Dodger blue, it will work. You can use HSL, which is the value for hue, saturation, and lightness. You pass, this is how you write. You pass one value for each one of them. You can use hex color, which is yellow, green, and blue. One value for each one of them. And depending on the value that you pass, you get a different color. Like this amount of red, this amount of green, and this amount of blue. You don't need to know the values by heart. There are 1,000 of hex colors generators out there. And you can use RGB, which is also red, green, and blue. This is how you write. And then you pass a value for red, a value for green, and a value for blue. And if I pass 255 for all of them will be white, and 0 will be black. So I can also write the black like this. But the reason why I want to use this one here, it's because when we use RGB, we can use an extra property, an extra value that is the alpha, which is opacity. So I could set the value of red, the value of green, the value of blue, and the value of alpha, which is the opacity. The same thing that I was explaining before. Opacity goes from 0 to 1. If you set to 1, it's completely solid. There's no opacity at all. And if you set to 0, it's completely, you can see through. But if you set to something like this, 0 will be no color at all, completely transparent. And you can add something like this that you can see through the black. So this is not gray because the color is not solid. I can see through the black color. I'm going to copy this here and go back and replace my black with this RGB here. And now you can see that I can see through my target, which is precisely what I want. I would just want this to have like, to be bigger. So the text can breathe, because right now it feels like the text is like, please, can I stay here? And I don't like this. So I need some inner space in this container. And like I said, when it's inner space, we call it padding. Margin, it's outer space. Padding, it's inner space. If I add the padding, you're going to see the container, the inner space of the container automatically gets bigger. And now I need a bigger text for this as well, because now the text is kind of lost in all this space. So I'm also going to change the font size. By the way, you can change the font family if you want to as well. Let's say to 25 pixels. There you go. Something like this. Now, the final thing that I want to do is that I want to centralize vertically. There are many ways of doing this. The way of doing, the way that I want to do this, it's basically, if I said, I just want some space at the top, you know, so I'm going to add some space at the top. So this black target, I don't know how to say this, background that we just create moves down. The same thing that we did with the About Me section when we added some space for the intro section. The problem is, if I add some margin top, I don't know, let's say 300 pixels, this is going to add an outer space to the entire container. I don't want this. If I add padding top, it's going to add some inner space, And I also don't want this. It's basically covering everything. Like if I just, you see, I don't want this. I'm already controlling the padding here. So what I basically want is the inner space, but not in this container. And yes, in the main container, the parent container, the intro container. I'm gonna add some padding top. And then it will centralize it. Padding top, yeah, that's it. I thought the image has changed, no? No, I think that's it. Okay. To make it this a bit nicer, I can also change one thing here. I'm gonna add something cool that is called the background dash attachment. And I'm gonna set to fix it. Fix it. Ah, now it's better. I think it was just processing a few things. Now, when we add the background attachment, you can create this cool effect that the background is fixed until you get to the end of it. Like you can have this, but I don't think I like that much. Maybe if I have it like this, I like it. If it's bigger, I like it. I'm gonna leave it like this. You can leave it or remove it. It's how you feel about it, okay? Cool. We're getting there. I think this is good enough for the intersection. We fixed it. So this is very common. You add something, you style something, you have to go back to something that you had styled previously. For example, this. You could also go, I could go back here and add some margin bottom to this image, which is actually one thing I think it would be nice. Margin bottom. Margin bottom, you could say at least 20 pixels, something like this, just to have some space. It's really common to have to do those things while you are styling. You go back to it, something changes and you go back and you have to fix some things. Be cool, go one thing at a time. Sometimes I feel that I'm just like, okay, I want to fix everything at once. Finish one thing and then you can go back and it's like, okay, I want to do this and so on. Can you share your link for website in the chat before the session is over? Yes, I will share. I just want to style the nav bar before, but don't worry, I'm going to share here and I'm going to share it on Slack. Okay, let's style the nav bar real quick. I'm going to give it a class to the nav bar because it looks very bad, especially compared to all of our page. So I'm going to create a section here for the nav bar. Should be here, nav bar. And I need to give it a class. I'm going to give it a class to the entire container. My nav bar. And again, this is a class, so I'm going to select with a dot and my nav bar. To avoid typos, I just copy and paste. And I just want to change the background color. I'm going to change it to something like gray. I'm just going to copy this one that we have it here because it's going to serve the purposes. I mean, after you can set your own values to it, but maybe a bit less opaque. Something like this. You can change, you can like add your own style to it, make it look like yours, like add the colors that you like. The other thing that I want to change is just maybe adding some padding because the text look very cannot breathe better. And then the other thing that I want to do is you can see that all my links are on the left and I would like to spread this link across my entire navigation bar because it doesn't make sense to have them all here to the left. Now, there is one thing on CSS that I love, that it's called CSS Flexbox. I'm going to share. This is a really good explanation, really cool guide about Flexbox. You can take a look here. The Flexbox is basically a property that transforms a container in a flexible container in CSS. And once you have a flexible container, you can control many things. You can control the parent, which is the container, and you can control the children, which are the items. They are flexible items. This might have been answered in another. Okay, give me a second. So when I have a flexible container, I can control the things from the container itself and from the items. And one of the things, you can control the order that you're going to have the elements, if they should be placed left to right, top to bottom, right to left. You can control all of this. And if it's going to be every single thing in one line, or you're going to wrap them, and you can control the remaining space in that container. So if you use the justify content, you can say, I want to place all my elements in the start or in the end, or centralize, or I want to spread them evenly across the container. And this is precisely what I want. So if I want to do this, the justify content with the space evenly, I need this container to be flexible. And to do this, I need to say that display flex. So from this point on, my navbar, it's flexible. Then the second thing that I need to do is just to justify content, which is the property from Flexbox that I can use. And then the value that I want is the space evenly. So it will spread the items evenly across my navigation bar. And with one single thing, that's it, which is pretty good. I'm going to fix the links and the colors. Give me 1 second. This might have been answered in another class, but why do I need to close my anchor with the / but not the others like nav? The nav is closed. Like the anchors are, it's like this is the opening tag and this is the closing tag. The nav, it's opening tag and the closing tag. Some of the tags, they don't have any content. For example, this is the content of the link tag, right? You have the opening, the closing, and then the content, which is precisely what you can see here. If you have an H1, you have the opening one, the closing one, and then the content, which is what you see on the page. Now, the image, for example, there's no content, you don't see anything. So if you don't need the content, those specific tags, you can just auto close, which is the case of the image. But every single tag, at some point, they need a /. Okay, real quick. I'm almost done. I swear I'm gonna stop. I just want to change the colors of the links, and that's the last thing. And I only have links. I want to style them all the same. Can you add the space between the headings and paragraph in the About Me section? Yes, you can just select the one that you want and add a padding or just add a padding or a margin on CSS. I want to apply the same style to all of my A elements. So I'm just going to select them with the A. I could do like this. Or if you want to make sure you want to be more specific, you could the nested things like selecting the A from the My navbar. In this example, I'm just going to leave it like this. And the first thing is that I don't like this color. So I'm just going to change the color to be white. So it's better. And I don't like this underscore. And this is a text decoration. So I can set the text decoration to be none. Way better. Way better. And then one very cool thing, because I'm going to finish in time, but because you stay with me up until this moment, I'm going to teach you something really cool that I love it. That it's called pseudo classes. The pseudo classes, it's a class that you can it's a value, a style property that you add just when some action is happening. For example, I can say that the A elements, when you hover over them, they're gonna have a color, let's dark slate gray. You have this color, dark slate gray, random. And then when you hover over, it kind of gives you a nice effect. And you can even change like the text, like the font size, but just when you are hovering over that specific element. Okay, sorry, can you repeat why just the A will work? Because I can use this is one way of a CSS selector. You can use the HTML tag, or you can use the dot for when it's class, or you can use the hash for when it's an ID. The thing is, I only have 4 A elements on my project, and I want to style them the same. I don't want one to be white and the other one to be green. So I can select them all. And the thing is, when you select the element itself, just the tag, all of the elements on your project with that tag will behave the same, will take in the same style. But in my case right now, this is precisely what I want. So this is not an issue. And the rest of the things still work. The about me still work. It takes me here. Now it's a bit better to see. If I click here, it takes me here. And this, it's how our project looks after styling it. And it's not bad. Okay, maybe this should be a bit bigger. Font size 18 pixels. Yeah, it's better. And I think it looks quite nice. What do you think? I mean, it can always improve, okay? I'm gonna save this and I'm gonna share the link with you. This is my final code. There you go. You can use it as a reference. That was it for today. Really chic. I love it. Any questions? So that was it. That was the introduction to CSS. I hope I could answer your question as we go. Again, a few things. Like when someone asks me something that I didn't remember on CSS, you can just Google how to make this in CSS. You can use the documentation. Like I said, W3, it's really good. I love it. You can play around with things. If you copy my code and if you are unsure of what this is doing, change. Like, honestly, this is how I learned also with CSS. Remove this, for example. Remove this. What happens? How does it go? And put it back. Ah, okay, so this is what happened when I remove this. Increase the space, like for, I don't know, from 10 to 50. So you can understand better what this property is doing. So this is also a really cool way of learning about CSS, like change the values of the property if you are unsure of what this property is for, because it's visual, you can see the result. For a minute, there's a thing I want to check. Okay, I'm gonna stay. Could you just, okay, could you just show me the CSS? Of course. Cool. I think I need to rewatch a class. Of course, I mean, I know I just throw a lot of content at you. I think the best way to learn how to code, it's actually coding. So even if you are not coding right now, rewatch the things and actually code, because this is when you're gonna forget your brackets, you're gonna forget the slash, you're gonna need to debug your code, you're gonna have some questions to ask, and then I'm happy to answer. Is there a way to mark bits of code that you want to come back later, like how you might highlight something in red in a Word doc? You can, exactly, you can identify with comments. So you can come back here, for example, I want to use this and I'm going to comment this out and then just have some different properties, you know, like I'm going to add different things, but I want to keep the previous one. You could do this. Usually it's with comments. Now, for tomorrow, we're gonna learn something called Bootstrap. Bootstrap, which is, that's it. Powerful, extensible, and feature-packed front-end toolkit. This is basically a library that we can use for CSS. So to create CSS, like really nice things on CSS, but responsive, which means it can adapt to different screen sizes, and also getting more complex designs with very few CSS. Like you can create things with a lot faster. Like Bootstrap will do great part of the work for you in CSS style. So you can style your websites super fast. So this is what we're gonna be doing tomorrow. We're still gonna use the same thing that we have. I'm just gonna replace a couple of things, but it's gonna be built on top of this, okay? More questions. I'm gonna share the video. I think, where is this? I think this is being streamed on YouTube. No, where is it? Well, it is somewhere. I'm gonna find it, and it's the same thing. I will share the link with you as soon as I have it. I will share the link on Slack, and you will receive it on the, this is from today, this is from tomorrow, yesterday, and you will receive it, the email as well. Could you send on Slack all the links to the websites you used? Yes, if I forget anyone, I'm gonna share all the ones that I have open here, but if I forget anyone, you can just ping me and remind me which one is missing, and I'm happy to share. Cool, thanks everyone. Again, please share your work. I would love to see how you're doing, and look forward to see you tomorrow. Cool. I couldn't add space between heading and paragraph. What have you tried? What have you tried, Vale? I try adding it to the about me between the heading and the paragraph. But if you add to the about me, that's the thing. Here I have a heading and here I have a paragraph. The about me, it's to the entire div. So if you want to add, for example, just to the heading, you need to give a class to the heading, or you need to go here to the about me. Let me go soon. Or you need to go here to the about me. You can see here that we selected about me and then the IMG. You can also select, thanks everyone, for those who are leaving, I'll see you tomorrow or on Slack. About me and H2, for example, and I can give it a margin bottom of 15 pixels. And there you go. So this, you would add to this. Should we send what we did? Yes, feel free to share it on Slack, what you have so far, so other people can see, can get inspired. I always, I like to read about your cities, so feel free to do, and I like to see your progress as well. Now, this is, I think that, I hope that answered your question. You could do like this, or you can give it a class. You can give it a class. About heading, I don't know, something like this, you know? And then you just come here and you say, this is the about me heading. And it will still be the same thing, but you need to target that specific element. Cool? More questions? No? Anouk is saying goodbye. I will see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye. Thanks for today.